So today, we're going to dive into the incredible story of Frederick Douglass. And it's a story that reveals something pretty profound, that for some people, getting an education isn't just about learning. It's a dangerous act of rebellion, one that brings unbelievable pain, but also, in the end, the key to freedom.
This one sentence right here is where it all begins. Now, an L is just an old unit of measurement, way longer than an inch. What Douglass is saying is that this one small act of kindness, just teaching him his ABCs, cracked open a door that could never, ever be shut again. It was the start of everything.
To really get the weight of this, we have to put ourselves in his shoes. I mean, think about it. For an enslaved person in 19th century America, learning to read wasn't just hard. It was forbidden. It was a crime. Why? Because it was a direct threat to the entire system of slavery.
And this gets to one of the biggest challenges he faced right away. The second his master found out he was learning, that was it. The lessons were over. From that point on, Douglass was watched like a hawk. Every moment he was alone, he was under suspicion. His quest for knowledge literally had to go underground. It became this secret, dangerous mission.
So how in the world do you learn to read and write when the whole world is designed to keep you from doing it, where just holding a book is a risk? Well, this is where you see the absolute genius of Frederick Douglass. He didn't just find a way, he had to invent one.
I mean, just look at this strategy. It is brilliant. He knew the poor white kids in his neighborhood were hungry, and he usually had access to bread. So he came up with a trade. He'd give them a piece of bread, and they'd give him a reading lesson. He turned them into his teachers, swapping what he called the more valuable bread of knowledge for actual bread.
And writing? Just as resourceful, if not more so. He'd go to the shipyard and see carpenters mark letters on wood, L for one side, S for the other. He'd copy them. His pen and ink, a piece of chalk. His notebook, a fence, a wall, the sidewalk. He even got clever and would challenge boys to writing contests, tricking them into teaching him more letters. It was an education built from scraps.
Then, when he was about 12, he got his hands on a book that changed the entire game. It was called The Columbian Orator. And this wasn't just a book of speeches. For Douglass, it was an arsenal of ideas. It gave him the intellectual ammunition he so desperately needed.
Can you just imagine being Douglass, a young enslaved boy, and reading a story where a slave actually argues his master into giving him his freedom? And not just that, but reading powerful speeches that laid out all the arguments against slavery. This wasn't just words on a page. It was a mirror reflecting his deepest unspoken thoughts.
And this right here is the absolute key. The most important thing he learned from that book wasn't just that slavery was wrong. He already felt that. It was the realization that truth itself was a weapon, that a logical, powerful argument could actually dismantle the lies that held slavery together. It finally gave a voice to everything that had been churning inside him.
But here's the twist. This new knowledge was a total double-edged sword. On one side, it was this incredible blessing. He finally had the words, the arguments, to understand his own condition. But on the other side, it was a terrible curse, because now he could see the walls of his prison with a kind of perfect, agonizing clarity.
And this brings us to the really tough part of his journey, this paradox of his education. With all this new understanding came this deep, crushing despair. He called it an unutterable anguish.
So you have to ask, and he definitely asked himself this, was this knowledge really a good thing? Was this whole experience of learning to read actually empowering, or did it just make his suffering 1,000 times worse? His own words are just heartbreaking. He said that learning to read showed him the horrible pit of slavery, but it gave him no ladder upon which to get out. Just imagine that feeling for a second. To see exactly how terrible your situation is, but to see absolutely no way out. The knowledge itself became a kind of torture.
You know, the pain got so bad that he actually started to envy the other enslaved people for their ignorance. He wished he could be an animal, anything at all, just to make his brain stop thinking. In those moments, not knowing seemed like a blessing.
But then, something shifted. This is the turning point. Because as agonizing as it was, once the idea of freedom was truly awake in his mind, there was no putting it back to sleep. He said it was like a silver trump that woke his soul up. And from that point on, freedom was this constant, burning light that would never go out again. And this is where that curse transforms into a catalyst. The torment didn't break him. Instead, it forged an iron will, a determination to be free that nothing could ever shake.
So back to our question, was his reading experience empowering? Oh, absolutely, but not in a simple, happy way. That anguish was the fire he had to walk through. It was because of that pain, because he saw his condition so clearly, that he developed the unbreakable resolve to escape. The very knowledge that was his curse became the fuel for his hope.
So let's just recap that journey. It all starts with the inch, the alphabet. That leads him to the book, which gives him the big ideas. Those ideas bring the curse of awareness and pain. But that curse is what ultimately forges the resolve. You see? Every single step was absolutely essential for the one that came after it.
And that leaves us with this really powerful question to think about. What Frederick Douglass's story shows us is that the path to real enlightenment is almost never easy. It can be a painful, wrenching awakening. But his life is proof of a timeless truth. The true freedom for one person or for an entire people often begins with a single, dangerous, and world-changing idea.